Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, it sounds like there's no extension coming for Kevin Durant, but that might not be as bad as it sounds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Monday, to kick off opening week of the NBA season. That's right. Don't forget Locked On Suns, guys, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button to do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet and start the season with a big return on FanDuel to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Again, place your first $5 bet, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wild West Valley. How are we feeling on this Monday, Ben Garcia?
Don't you ever leave me again. Don't you ever leave me again. It was a long week. I'm trying to steer the ship. You are no longer allowed to take any vacation. I hope you liked your last one in the history of vacations.
Yeah, last one of my life.
Tell your wife you're never going again. Because I called you too many times. I texted you. This guy is 3 hours ahead, having to deal with me. Sometimes he doesn't text me back, and I'm like, yeah, he shouldn't. And so, yeah, I appreciate you for getting back to me as many times as you did, but you're not allowed to.
You held it down. Shout out to Espo for joining us. Shout out to the Board Bets episode. People got a little bit of a taste of me, and shout out to the Suns for giving you good games to talk about. You had to stay up pretty late, but they were good games. So I guess that counts for something here. All right. Kevin Durant made some news around Kevin Durant. The extension we've been talking about all offseason does not appear to be coming. We'll talk about that and maybe why it's not such a bad thing. And then we'll zoom out, take a big look at Bradley Beal's preseason. It was not great by the numbers. Is that anything to worry about? We shall see. First, Ben, no Durant extension per Shams Charania. And then Durant was asked about it as well and kind of said he's just focused on what comes this season, not really looking to deal with any of that right now. So just as a refresher, before I ask you for your thoughts, Durant would have only been able to sign a one-year extension this summer because of a minute rule in the CBA called the over 38 rule, which just sort of bans players from going too far out once they pass that age, which he's coming up on. He can sign a 2-year deal next summer, which sounds like where this is headed. And just on top of all of it, to make sure people are following us, Ben, contract is only going for 2 more years currently. So because there's no extension, he has 2 years left. If he doesn't sign it this year, we will go into next summer where they expect to be signing one. And he'll only have 1 year at that point. He will effectively be an expiring contract. So that sounds a little scary, but where do you land? Is this a big deal to you, or did you expect it? What were your thoughts?
Well, I wasn't expecting this, but I would say it's not a big deal. I got to give credit to Kevin Durant and even more specifically the front office for doing this. This is one of the messiest but non-messiest contract negotiations ever because Durant seems like he's totally on the right page. Everyone is all cool. The front office is cool. But if you look at it, this would be the messy part of you're playing with a guy's money. But it doesn't seem like he is. It seems like they're both on the right track of where they want to be. They know they want him here. And Ishbia had mentioned at Media Day, where Kevin Durant loves it here. We love Kevin Durant. And they're not putting anything out in the public. I'm not worried about it at all. This looks like on the outskirts that this should be messy. And you and I talked about this. It was the first episode I had ever been on. And I wasn't sure about the whole Kevin Durant thing. I've totally flipped the 180. They absolutely need to sign this guy. I don't know what I was thinking at that point, but that's just what happens. But this team has done everything right to this point where it looks like both guys are on the same page. And I don't think it at all should be something that Suns fans worry about. It's going to get done one way or another. That's going to help both sides. What about you?
Yeah, bottom line is if it's true, and I have no reason to think it's not true, that he wants to do the 2-year deal next summer. I mean, he hasn't said that, but that is the indication from Shams Charania and the other reporting here. He wants to be on the team for longer. I mean, that's what this is telling us. If he took a deal this summer, it would have been nice from a Sun standpoint because it gives you some concrete comfort that you have the guy under contract for longer. There is a little bit of squirminess of, okay, we're kind of out in the wilderness a little bit here, not having this guy under a long-term contract. But if all goes according to plan, you're going to have him for longer anyway, because the contract extension starts the same season, no matter if you sign it now or you sign it next summer. So it is literally just 1 year or 2 years, and 2 years is better. So, even if they had done 1 year this year, they probably next summer we would have been having the same conversation. Does he extend for another season? Because he would have been allowed to do that. So it feels weird to go into a season. We talk about these extensions as these inflection points and these moments where the player and the team kind of get to date each other again a little bit and feel each other out. But this one doesn't scare me because it really does seem to just be a byproduct of this over 38 rule more than anything else. And if he gets that extension next summer, which we'll talk about kind of what has to happen between now and then, Ben, but we're verging toward this being the second longest tenure of any place Kevin Durant has played. That should make Suns fans excited. Like, this should be exciting news. This should signal he wants to be here even longer and wants to maximize what that all can look like. So until anything changes, that's how I'm going to look at it.
Yeah, the one thing that had really worried me the very first time I was on this show, and we kind of debated, should he be here? Should he not be here? I've done a complete 180. They absolutely need to sign this guy for a multitude of reasons that we don't really need to get into right now. But one of my biggest reasons was Kevin Durant's had an Achilles injury. He has hurt himself before, nicks and bruises, and he is older, where it just was one of the things where I was like, I don't know. I think his game is going to be just fine and age really well. Through the preseason, this might just be the fanboy in me. He looks better than he did last year. Maybe it's because of the offense. Maybe it's because of the fluidity. He's getting to his spots better. But there has been no drop-off in Kevin Durant's game. If he was better statistically and more efficient this year, I wouldn't be surprised. This guy has done everything to stay healthy. He's done everything correct. He's taken care of himself. This isn't the Carmelo Anthony thing where you really wondered if the guy actually cared or was just trying to get his money. Sign the guy, figure it out as long as you can, have control over him. And I do think Kevin Durant is going to finish his career here. That's actually a good. Do you think he does finish his career with the Phoenix Suns? Because if he does, I mean, how is he going to be remembered going into the Hall of Fame? OKC was a really long time ago. No one really likes the Golden State Warriors years. The Brooklyn Nets was kind of seen as a debacle. The Suns, He's been largely healthy and has been a really good player.
I think, as long as nothing catastrophic happens, I think that has to be the odds-on favorite. You got to expect that he would finish his career here. I remember having that debate like the last half season when he got traded here and wondering, and it was kind of set in motion to happen because he got here with 3 years left on his contract. So 3.5. So you got to expect that that's where this is headed. I don't want to put a cap on how long this guy's going to play, but we're talking about 2 more years after this and then 2 more after that if he does sign this extension. And he just turned 36. So at that point, he'd be 40. We're talking about LeBron retiring every single month and day at this point. You would have to think that it's on the table. I have one last thing, though.
Yeah.
We talked about when you did come on that first time about trades and like what if it ever goes down that route. And I don't even really want to spend time. That's why I'm plugging it here right before a break. But it's worth talking about because whether you or I or any fan listening thinks about it this way, I guarantee James Jones and Matt Ishbia, they'd be not doing their job if they didn't think about what a trade would look like and whatever. But as far as it goes, the fact that the Suns are not pressing to get this extension done and playing hardball and trying to force it means that they're not even worried about the trade value of this player right now. So if you go back to June when Adrian Wojnarowski is making stuff up about the Houston Rockets being able to get Kevin Durant, congrats on your retirement, Woj. You made stuff up. That was not real. You were doing Houston a favor.
Oh, man. It's funny.
And you fast forward to now, if the Suns were worried that in the next little bit they would have to trade him because he's unhappy or he's this or he's that, they would be determined to get another year tacked onto this contract because that would make him more valuable in a trade. The fact that they don't care about that and they, on their side of this, are willing to just go into next summer and do a 2-year deal and kind of take that risk a little bit shows me, it kind of proves that this thing is, for now, solid as can be.
If any Suns fan is out there is still advocating for a potential Kevin Durant trade, whatever on the table, whether now or at the deadline, things have changed. Tyus Jones is here. Ryan Dunn looks better. There is no situation at all in anyone's forefront of their mind, either with the Suns, and they show it here with this extension talk, or now with Kevin Durant, that he should ever be in any trade discussions. Kevin Durant is here for the long haul, and that's good for the Suns, especially for everything that's happened recently.
Ben, what if the Rockets really want him, though? Does that change your answer?
Yeah,
Did they just get him?
Stupid. It's so stupid. That was so stupid. What was even dumber was when he had mentioned that Devin Booker was part of that.
Yeah.
Stupid. Hey, listen, a lot can change in a few months, and the Rockets would love to be in the Suns' position right now. So that's just kind of the way I feel.
Okay, what has to happen between now and next summer to keep the good vibes rolling? We'll talk through a little bit of that because it's not just a lock that a deal gets done 12 months from now. Ben just said things change quickly. How do the Suns keep this thing rolling? So KD wants to be here, and they want to have him like they're all saying now. We'll talk through that next. First, today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp, working to make therapy easier and more accessible for everybody. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies or ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing your fears in the first place and holding yourself back. I've said this a million times. I've been in therapy. It is not just for emergencies, extreme situations, or the worst of the worst. It can just be about making yourself the best version of yourself and learning coping skills, boundaries, and how to just deal with everyday life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get started and match with a licensed therapist. Then you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge to find the best one for you. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Coming back. Okay, Ben, I don't think we have to make this any more negative than it is. I don't see any reason right now to believe that next summer the Suns will not get on the phone, get in a building with Rich Kleiman and Kevin Durant and ink an extension. I just said the fact that the Suns are comfortable with it shows me that they believe it. The fact that KD is willing to play it patiently tells me that if he wasn't wanting to sign any extension, we would already know, and he'd probably be getting shopped, and we'd have a very different podcast on our hands. I feel like as long as this offense continues to look like it has under Bud, and the fit and the chemistry is as good as it looks like it's been during camp and preseason, this is just going to take care of itself. How about you?
Kevin Durant, I just mentioned before, the fall off from what he has in his skill set. Athleticism is always the first thing to go, and I wouldn't necessarily say that Kevin Durant's athleticism is exactly what's keeping him as one of the top 10 players, top 8 players in the NBA still right now. I don't see his production falling off a cliff in the next year or in the next 2 years. And that's so hard for people to project, for people to say, because these guys, as we've grown up, as they've gotten older, normally 31, 32 is like the clock strikes midnight for these guys. But everything is just different now. This Suns team clearly has a plan, which is why they are going to re-sign Kevin Durant to a 2-year extension whenever that may happen. Obviously, likely more next year than this year. They have a plan for the future. They have a plan that this team that is just has to continue to get better as years progress. Now, is that an NBA Finals appearance? I mean, who knows? You have to get lucky for that.
That was my question. How do you think of it in terms of how far they have to go? Or like,
yes,
last year was ugly, right? So
yeah.
that's not what it should look like. So then what does it need to look like if it's not? I mean, it can't just be a championship. Oh, they're only going to get to keep him if they win the title. Like, that's kind of unreasonable. We said that about a whole bunch of players over the years, and then look, there they are on the roster the next year. That's not really how it works. So what do they have to do? How much success do they have to have?
Yeah, before Tyus Jones, I had said this team is probably going to be a second-round team and probably get beat kind of handily. But with guys like with Mike Budenholzer, we're all bullish on Ryan Dunn. Tyus Jones is here. This team, it matters how they lose, but I would take them right now losing in the Western Conference Finals. And that's just a projection. That's everyone staying healthy. Things can change. That means nothing right now. But I would take them in the conference finals, losing in 6 games to God knows who. And that would be enough for me to sign Kevin Durant, because then you could still build on that stuff. You still are able to go get players. You can trade guys. Maybe Tyus Jones. I don't know what all of that would look like. But what I will say right now is, I do believe that there needs to be a Western Conference Finals appearance as of right now to justify keeping Kevin Durant and not shopping him or not seeing what else is out there. Because if you're a Western Conference Finals team, that means you're just a piece or two away. And maybe you draft a guy, you hit on another guy, you don't have your first round pick, but still second round picks, they loaded up on those. You just have to be able to be a very competitive team in the playoffs. And right now, I think that is a team that loses in game 7 of a second round or a Western Conference Finals appearance, which I don't think is crazy now to ask.
No, I don't think it's crazy. And I think that's about where I would put it in terms of playoff distance. But
yeah.
So I actually see it a little bit different. So to me, maybe fans feel differently. Maybe you feel differently. To me, most playoff sweeps are flukes. So I look at last year. I'm not saying that the Suns should have won that series. They did not play well enough to even have any case that I could make to anybody that they should have won the series. But Royce O'Neal goes cold. Grayson Allen gets hurt. Anthony Edwards goes off. Cat has some big games. Whatever. It is always unlikely that it's going to end in 4 games. So we would feel a little differently if they lost in 6 or 7 to Minnesota. Probably not terrifically differently, but it is what it is. What I would say is I actually think this regular season going well is going to have a lot to do with how KD feels. Because I think, look, he's done this a few times. I think he would understand, and I think everybody involved would understand, if they get a bad second-round matchup and they end up having to play the Thunder and they lose in 5. Sometimes that's just how it goes. You know what I mean? The Wolves overachieved and traded their second-best player. You know what I mean? Like,
it's crazy.
It's stuff just happens. But I think if they can have a regular season where they're in the mid-50s win total wise, and they do develop chemistry, they stop beating themselves, Bud integrates himself really well. I feel like if I'm KD, I'm also looking for, this would lock him in for 2 more seasons, 3 total seasons. I want the whole thing to look stable in a way that it didn't this past year, to feel comfortable. And that's not just based on the draw you get in the playoffs or somebody gets hurt or, in his case, he steps on the line against Milwaukee, and now you lost in the second round when if you win that game, you're beating Atlanta, you're probably beating Phoenix, and you maybe win a tie. Like, he knows the deal with that. So I want to see a good regular season if I'm Kevin Durant and show signs of stability that this is a place I want to be the rest of my career.
In terms of stability, are you talking not just record, but the guys you're going to battle with? So health too. Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, who
health,
chemistry, who gets dinged up sometimes.
If I'm looking at it and feeling like, oh, we got Ryan Dunn, he's a guy. Like, that's another dude we have. Grayson took another step forward in his all-around game, and we kept him, or Nurk, or we somehow feel like we're actually going to keep Tyus or some, whatever the case may be. Some of the stuff you were talking about kind of all factors in, but I think that we might see that even more in the regular season than just the playoffs, because the playoffs the past few years, it's been parity. It's been kind of random, if we're being honest, and so that can vary. I'm not trying to like lower expectations or anything. I think what you said is right. But I guess if I'm thinking about if I'm Kevin Durant trying to think, am I going to retire here? I want to look through the 8 months, not just the 1 month,
It's an interesting way to put it because when you remember, it's so easy to remember the postseason last year because it was such a horrific way to go out. Getting swept against the Timberwolves where Anthony Edwards is crotch chopping himself in the middle of your home floor. Like all of that was really memorable. And what is memorable to me as well is the regular season being not fun to watch at all. But I'm sure for the players and now fans, when you really jog their memory, probably allows them to remember just how hard it was to watch this team. They could be playing outside of the Hornets where Devin Booker just dropped 60 points, the Pelicans, because Devin Booker just dropped 60 points every time they played them. Every single game was hard to watch. They lost 2 of 3 to Jeremy Shohan and Victor Wembanyama last year. No game was an easy W. No game was a gimme. If it wasn't one of those 3 guys going off, or if they weren't all healthy, it was just a pain. So I think even the emotional factor for Kevin Durant, whereas he's willing to give last year a mulligan, but is this year going to be a little bit more joyous? And is basketball not going to be seen as so much like a job for them, but something they get to do? So that's an interesting way to put it. And just remembering how awful the regular season was, that postseason was 2 weeks. The regular season was 7 months.
I mean, we saw it, right? Like the thing I said the whole season when we would have the conversation about Durant looking visibly frustrated and talking, smack to his teammates and all that stuff.
Eubanks.
I was frustrated that he couldn't own up to that, but I was partially frustrated that he wouldn't own up to it because it was so understandable. Of course you're frustrated. This sucks. You're the only healthy guy. The team around you is not what it was expected to be. That's frustrating. So just, accept that. But I don't think this season will be like that. And if it's not, I think that'll go a long way. One last little thing. I want to say, like, there's a thing that kind of happens with like LeBron or Curry or people like that, where salary-wise, like we haven't really mentioned, this would be a max extension, almost without a doubt. But you kind of get into this thing where at a certain point, KD might have more value to the Suns than other teams, right? So that's just something to kind of think about. Not in terms of a trade, but like if he were to choose to go into free agency, like what does that even look like? We've never really seen somebody 38 years old suddenly wanting, what would he want, a 4-year max contract into his early 40s? Like there gets to be this point where it just makes more sense to stay where you are because that team's going to give you the max and you're comfortable there and everything else. So it's just something to think. Is he really going to change teams again? Like, I think people have this perception that Durant is just constantly chomping at the bit to go somewhere. And it's like, just look at history. Look at the other players in his situation. LeBron has been on the Lakers for a long time now. He's not in a hurry to leave. So just think about that. Okay, let's talk about Beal's preseason. Worried? Not worried. The numbers aren't great, but it is just preseason. We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, all at FanDuel.com. I'm going to be watching Game 5 of the WNBA Finals on Sunday night, but that will have already come and gone by the time that we are looking at Monday for all of you. What are the Cardinals? 1.5-point underdogs at home on Monday Night Football. That feels about right. That means they're 4.5-point underdogs. Really, if you're really thinking about it, because they are the home team, that unfortunately is where I expected to go. Maybe you just put a little down on the win and feel better if it happens. Either way, you're getting $200 in bonus bets to really get started and enjoy this awesome sports month of October, all at FanDuel.com. All right, Ben, let's close out the show here. Want to remind everybody, actually, to check out our Locked On Suns Daily Newsletter. We are launching something that is going to be your one-stop shop for not only Suns analysis from Ben and I, links to everything going on with the show, links to everything going on with our whole network of NBA podcasts, but also news and great writing from staff who we are hiring for this, and tons of other stuff. News around the league, analysis from other writers everywhere in the galaxy of the NBA. We want it to be something you go to if you love the Suns and you love basketball. So sign up at the link in the show description below. We'll keep plugging that and telling you more about it. And you love us. That also helps. You want our lovely perspective as much as you possibly can, of course. That's a no-brainer. Okay, Ben. So Bradley Beal this preseason played every game. Great. He only played like half of one last year. 39%.
And he's healthy.
And he's healthy still. He made it through all of them and didn't have anything go wrong. 39% from the field, 32% from three, 9 assists and 8 turnovers, so almost 1-to-1 there. And just sort of big picture, like I think you would say the Pistons game was the only like, oh, that was a nice Beal game. Like he really played well. The other 4, not so much. On the positive side, I would say you look at the 3-point attempts. He bought into getting those up. So some good, some bad. How worried are you looking at all of that? And how much do you think, what of that do you think might carry over into the regular season?
I am literally 0% worried about Bradley Beal's preseason. Like I'm 0% worried about it. If I'm not going to overreact to Nurkic's finger injury that kept him out 3 games, or Grayson Allen who's still injured, or the fact that it's a brand new team, I'm not going to overreact to every little thing like I did last year with the Suns. I'm not going to do that. There were moments, I'll be honest with you, Brendon. I knew Bradley Beal's statistics weren't amazing in the preseason just because I watched every single game and I could see it. And I'd be like, oh, he missed a couple of shots there. I can generally remember most of that stuff. I didn't realize it was as bad statistically as you had said just a minute ago. And then when you had texted it to me before, Bradley Beal had moments in the preseason where I was like, oh, that was a nice little crossover and shimmy shake and mid-range shot. I feel bad for Bradley Beal because the third star on a team is almost always going to get the most blame. That was Kevin Love for years. That was Chris Bosh for years. That was whoever it was on a trio of guys. That was whatever, Ray Allen or Paul Pierce for years on the Celtics. That player is almost always going to get the most critique. But what people don't understand is the person that is going to be asked to change the most is Bradley Beal. He had to change the way he did things last year. He has to change the way he does the things this year. Give the guy some time to figure out where he needs to be, allow him to be healthy, and he's going to absolutely be fine. He just has to find and get in the groove of playing with Tyus Jones, of not having the ball in his hands all the time, of being a spot-up shooter at times. He has to be the Swiss Army knife to change on the fly. Devin Booker's not going to do that. Kevin Durant's not going to do that. It's just crazy to me. And the sometimes outcry of people having Bradley Beal disdain or upset that the Suns traded for him like a year and a half ago, even though everyone was happy when it happened. Give the guy some time to be the person that has to most adjust on this offense. I'm not worried about Bradley Beal, and so I'll toss it over to you. Are you worried about Bradley Beal's preseason performance?
I think worried would be silly.
Strong.
But I land where you land at the end there of I do think it's real that he's the guy who is facing the biggest adjustment. And it's the second straight season that's been true. So maybe it is a reason for patience. His preseason is a reminder that he might take a minute to settle in to what he's going to be asked to do. Which is why I made a point of highlighting the positive aspect that he did keep those 3-point attempts up. I think it was 6 or more in 4 out of the 5 games. That's exactly what it needs to be because he wasn't even playing the most minutes. Yeah. So I think Beal, I guess here's the question though, is like, he's at media day, we talked afterward and we were both kind of noticing the relief and optimism, if you want to call it that, of his comments saying, I get to be me again, right? Like I get to be the Bradley Beal that you've all kind of come to expect. Are we sure that's true? Like, is he actually going to get to be Bradley Beal, or is he going to be like, I don't know, Kyle Korver or something in this Bud system, you know?
Well, listen, if he could beat Kyle Korver, we'd all be ecstatic about that. But I think it's Bradley Beal having to go back to not just a year ago Bradley Beal or 2 years ago Bradley Beal. Like, I was looking up a statistic. He's jacking up 6 3-pointers a night, roughly, in what was a 4-game sample size. He hasn't done that since 2021 with the Wizards, where he was literally having to be Bradley Beal, having to cook on the court, having to be all the offense. He is trying to learn how to go back to be Wizards Bradley Beal and be a shot chucker from 3-point. I guess I shouldn't say shot chucker because that's Anthony Edwards or Jason Tatum at times, but a 3-point shooter, volume, but also trying to balance being efficient. Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant does not ever have this in his mind, and Devin Booker never has this in his mind. Bradley Beal always has in the back of his mind, is it my turn to shoot yet? Because I feel like Kevin Durant hasn't gotten the ball yet, or Devin Booker. The person whose stats are going to fall down the most is Bradley Beal. And he always has in the back of his mind, can I pull up here? I mean, Devin's got 20 points, but normally he gets 25. Like, that's what he has to deal with. It's not just a physical part of the game. It's a mental side of the game. He's a smart player. He is not only smart, he's mature, and he does everything this team asks him to do. I don't know if at some point he just fits better on the bench. I don't know if at some point he fits better as the point guard at times or whatever. Let the guy figure it out. I'm not worried about it until I need to be worried about it, until I have an extended look of games where he's just been awful. The dude's not washed. He's just trying to figure out what fits him best on this team while also staying healthy. Like, imagine that as well. He's got to keep in the back of his head, I got to get the ball to Devin. I got to get the ball to Kevin. I don't want to go for the extra rebound here because I don't want to get hurt. Like, let the guy figure it out.
I got to take a 3 rather than attacking the closeout and pulling up, which he has said was something in the back of his mind. Yeah, to get the numbers right, because I forgot they all sat the one preseason game. So he only played 4. He was healthy, obviously, the whole time. And then 3-point attempts, he took 6 or more the first 2, the most recent 2 games, and then it was 3 and then 4 in the first couple. But still, given that he was ramping up minutes, that kind of all maps out the same way. And I would just add, too, in terms of the mental load here, his defensive role is changing. It's a lot less on ball against the best wings in the NBA, which was what Frank Vogel kind of put on his lap last year, and he did well. But now it's another, he's having to make more rotations and switch more and kind of communicate and be a little more all over the place rather than just focusing on, I'm guarding Zion tonight, and that's going to be what it is. So a lot to be thinking about, in addition to, obviously, like you said, the physical of staying healthy, the physical of kind of the rhythms of, I think, being more of a 3-point shooter versus more of an attacker. It is a lot, and it might take time. What I would say, they look pretty damn good anyway, and that's the luxury of having a big 3, is one of the guys can have an off night or an off couple of weeks, and you're probably still in pretty good position to win games and succeed anyway. All right. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter in that link down below. We are going to be pumping those out for you every single day, in addition to this podcast, to get you all caught up on the Suns and the wide world of basketball every day. We'll be back tomorrow with one more episode as we march toward game number 1 against the Clippers on Wednesday night. Enjoy your Monday. We'll catch you later.